Yes, my name is Chris Shepard, and I did my paper this fall for the Problems in Education class on teacher performance-based pay. It's something that I've found myself to be very interested in, especially being that I taught for 3 years in the state of Florida, and during my time down there, Charlie Crist, who is the governor, who's actually going to be leaving as governor down there, was pushing for performance-based pay for teachers. This is a fairly old concept, but it has just really begun to gain some steam since No Child Left Behind, and I'll get more into that a little bit later on. Um, Basically, my paper highlights, just to kind of give you an idea of how much I ended up getting off this. I did it for the 3 hour part of the class. Um, I ended up with 21 pages. I ended up with a total of 152.5 hours, which is just barely over the amount of time that I needed, for the minimum of 150. Ended up with 19 sources, I believe. It may be 20 now that I think about it. Most of the information that I did find, not surprisingly, seemed to be against performance-based pay. You ended up with more stances against it, more data that showed that performance-based pay really doesn't help test scores, doesn't help teacher evaluations in the long term, and in fact can end up doing more damage than good throughout the long term. I did find some data, though, just like any other thing in education, where there wasn't enough to support the fact that teacher-based, performance-based pay does work. So it's just like anything else that you do. It's and especially in education, you're going to find a lot of pros and a lot of cons. Paper layout was pretty simple, kind of pretty much I'm imagining like everybody else's. Had the title page. Following the title page, I did have the problem description, and my problem description pretty much is simple. Is that I wanted to find out more about performance-based pay in education. Did it work? Is it something that has some merit to it? It really has, again, caught on steam since the No Child Left Behind Act was passed. However, this actually idea has been around really since the mid 1980s under Ronald Reagan. Nancy Reagan was actually making a push at the time on behalf of her husband, saying that teachers needed to maybe step it up a little bit and wanted pay based on performance to help the lowering national test achievement level that was in correlation with that of other countries at the time. It started to be known that maybe we were falling behind the Japanese and countries like that, basically to kind of catch up. So that the idea has actually been around. Then I had my time log. Time log again, just basic layout, ended up with 152.5 hours. Research findings, I'll get more into that in just a moment. And then I did have my summary and concluded with my bibliography. Again, like I said, ended up with roughly about 21 pages of research and found out a lot of information. The problem, the basis for my research is to determine if there is any merit to teachers being paid based on student achievement on standardized tests or on teacher evaluations. In other words, does teacher performance-based pay work? It's going to be something this is an issue that's pretty much going to be debated for a while. I see it not going away because there is enough data on one side or the other now to show where it works or show where it doesn't work. And once you have a basis for something working, then you have something that's going to stick around for a little bit. And whether I'm not for or against it, we'll get to that in just a moment. But it is something I was interested in, something I don't see going away. Some of the findings I found four performance-based pay in teachers. One of them was what they've been doing in Washington, D.C. Some of you may have heard about the chancellor of the District of Columbia Schools, a lady named Michelle Rhee. She kind of runs a tight ship up there in the Washington, D.C. district. They're notorious. She was one of the first real people to kind of start cutting teachers loose for not performing up to getting test scores up. They have run a volunteer type of program in which some teachers did volunteer to have their pay based on performance. And there was off evaluation, not so much state standardized testing or any kind of standardized testing. It was all off teacher evaluations. According to the data I found, the evaluations were very vigorous, so something that almost gives you a sense as an educator that you would almost be set up to fail. However, they did run a study where, and they did try it out, where roughly they had 248 teachers try this out. From the 248 teachers, they did have a substantial amount of teachers that did excel at this and receive full bonuses, while a smaller number either received partial bonus or no bonus. Minneapolis, Minnesota also did something very similar. Theirs was based off a combination scale score of teacher evaluation and standardized test score by the students. And in Arkansas, they actually did something as well, but theirs was strictly based off standardized test scores. So it's something that is kind of one way or the other wanting to see if the teacher is performing, if the students are learning under the teacher's instruction, and pay and bonuses are basically merited off of that. One thing that this kind of would lead to is a nationalization of the school system. You would need a set standard of if one person in Florida is going to be evaluated under these standards and performance-based pay, then someone in Idaho, for example, needs to be held under the same standard for the same type of pay. The problem with that is that this, for years, since the development of our country, education is something that has been state controlled. It's something that I believe should be controlled by the states still to this day. So that's something that kind of did bother me as I did research, is the more and more that it called for national results as far as having a sliding scale that was nationwide, teacher evaluations that were based on a national type of rubric. So that way, like I said, one person in Florida could be doing the same type of evaluation as someone in Idaho. And got a little bit of problem with that. Some of the findings against, like I said, I found way more against than I found for. Some of the intangibles is that really keep coming up in anything I find with any of the data against performance-based pay is what happens when you have the inner city students versus the more privileged upper class type of students. In inner city, you have all the different intangibles of a broken home, poverty, crime, things like that, things that can affect a student's learning. Whereas the more privileged areas, you don't have so many of those things to get in the way or be a deterrent from learning. So should teachers in the inner city be held to the same accountability as those in privileged areas, and so forth. Also, there was a RAND Corporation experiment in Nashville, Tennessee. And in the RAND Corporation, again, this was completely voluntary by some teachers in the school district in Nashville, Tennessee. It ran from 2006 to 2009. There were 296 middle school math teachers, which was 2/3 of the middle school math teachers in the district volunteered for this experiment. Half were randomly placed in a control group, while the rest were eligible for bonuses of $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000, depending on how their students achieved on the Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment Program, or TCAP. So again, this one was completely state standardized test based. 1/3 of the eligible teachers, or 51 of the 142, or 34%, got bonuses at least one time. 18 of the teachers received bonuses all 3 years, and except for some temporary gains for fifth graders, really none of the students showed any significant progress or regression one way or the other on the state standardized test scores. So therefore, there was enough data from the 296 teachers to show that while there was some gains, they weren't as significant to really merit paying teachers for performance on this. Another thing that you have, the term teaching to the test comes into play. You end up with a lack of creativeness in the classroom where teachers can't teach the whys. For example, in history, why did an event occur? You end up with the meat of the problem and the facts of the problem instead of the whys, the hows, and that kind of leads to a lack of creativeness in the classroom and a lack of understanding of the true concept by the student. Also, teacher surveys. I found a ton of data where there's been teacher surveys in many districts throughout the country where teachers are really against this performance-based just for the intangibles. And again, is it fair if a child has a rough morning at the house, bombs out on the test, am I to be punished for that? And there's some things that as teachers we really can't control. So my summary, my conclusion, I really found nothing to change my mind on this. I am totally against performance-based pay. I did keep an open mind while I was doing this. There's just too many intangibles of what happens at home. Can we control that? Can we not control that? There's not enough proof for me to show that it really does work, especially after reading the data from that RAND Corporation experiment in Nashville. It leads to too high of a teacher turnover rate, which doesn't allow us to gain a relationship with our students. And if you don't have a relationship with your students, then you really don't have a trust type of aspect in the classroom, then that kind of inhibits learning a little bit as well. So very much what I found is I'm sticking with what I thought to begin with. I'm very much against teacher performance-based pay. I think it's something that needs to go away and something that really has no merit in the classroom and something that really casts a shadow over what we try to do as educators. Well, guys, that's pretty much it. My bibliography, just to show y'all some of the literature and some of the websites that I used for my research. Pretty basic. And again, this was very helpful to me, and it's something that kind of helps me gain a foothold on understanding and believing in something. Found it totally beneficial, and absolutely glad I chose this because it is something that's going to affect us all at some point or another. I got a feeling. So as we go on to the worlds of no child left untested. So anyway, I hope everyone had a great semester, and I thank you for watching this video, and take care.